Yo, what the hell's up? Welcome back to Reviews with Jake, where I just got done watching Ghostbusters Afterlife. Ghostbusters Afterlife is the story about a single mother and her two kids who move into an old dilapidated house in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, in a house that they inherited from a recently deceased father. A man that none of them knew really anything about, but when strange paranormal things start to happen in this random tiny little town, well, as Kevin Hart once said, you gonna learn today. I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the Ghostbusters franchise, and I choose those words very deliberately. I did not say that I did not like the Ghostbusters, I just said I'm not the biggest fan. There is a difference. I've seen the original films, I've enjoyed them. Granted, it's been many years since I have. So long that the cobweb accumulation on them probably looks like a place that could use a good ghost busting or two. So with this new installment, I'm not going in as a Ghostbusters purist, a loyalist. Frankly, I don't remember about the original movie. I'm just going in to see a good movie. Still, it needs to be a movie that justifies its own existence. While I am not going to be among the many people that are going to go into this movie holding it up side by side next to the original, I still think that it is a critical decision that they chose to attach this movie to this IP, this franchise. While I'm not going in looking for references or Easter eggs like many people are, I do think that there is a cost to slapping a name like this, a franchise like this, on the title of your film. You don't just get to reap the benefits of having a title like the Ghostbusters, having those automatic people, those fan bases that are going to see your movie no matter what because of what it's called. There are also requirements. You're gonna have to check a few boxes. A prime example where I'm gonna be on the other side of the fence on something like this is gonna be next week when I see the new Resident Evil movie, where I am a huge fan of it and I'm going in with weird mixed emotions and expectations. It's gonna be interesting. But for now, for Ghostbusters, I enjoy Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd. For this installment, I enjoy Paul Rudd and Mckenna Grace when she's popped up in horror movies like Mike Flanagan or James Wan. I think Finn Wolfhard is okay, despite the fact that he is getting hit in the face with puberty harder than I've seen anyone get hit in my life. And the pros start right there with the performances, mostly quite entertaining. The pinnacle of which is Mckenna Grace's character. She did a fantastic job playing this dorky, super intelligent daughter of this family. As enjoyable as Paul Rudd is in this film, which is obviously super delightful as he always is in every single movie he's in, it's Mckenna Grace that really steals the show. I am pretty confident that we're going to start to see her a lot more going forward, even outside the confines of the horror genre where she seems to be swimming in exclusively at this point. Unless that's her choice, of course. If she loves being in horror movies and dark supernatural films, then carry on, you talented young lady. I also really enjoyed this Logan Kim kid, who I don't think I've ever seen before. I'd have to double check IMDb, but I am too lazy. But he plays Mckenna Grace's character's friend, who's sort of this weird, geeky, paranormal enthusiast named Podcast. Kid's pretty charming and funny. I dug it. There are obviously other good performances in there, but it's these three that I thought really carried the show. They deserve so much praise. I also really enjoyed the visuals of this film from pretty much every perspective, starting with the scenery and the landscapes. This film takes place in Oklahoma, desert country, a terrain and landscape that I've always had a strange and strong affinity for. The sunset going down over a dried out Firestone mountainside. I mean, come on, it does not get any more beautiful than that. I also really enjoyed the locations and set designs of this old rural beat up town. Some old throwback retro diners with neon lights, dilapidated buildings, old mines. I thought they did a good job of really selling this place as a real hole in the wall. A place that begs the question as to why this supernatural apocalyptic event is happening here of all places. A question at the tip of the tongue of every single character in this film. On that note, I also really enjoyed the effects of this film. It naturally has a lot of really vibrant light, as you'd expect from a Ghostbusters movie. It also has a lot of CGI, very well done CGI, as you'd also expect in a movie like this in 2021. But there were also moments where they did things practically. They had animatronics and I was not expecting that. I applaud them. In a world where the Jurassic Park / Jurassic World franchise doesn't even use real life dinosaurs anymore, to see real life creatures, real physical things appear in a movie in a Ghostbusters franchise, I don't know, props to the prop guys. I also thought that in general, the film managed using the Ghostbusters IP very appropriately, at least for the most part. It did a decent job telling its own story, blazing a new trail while simultaneously blessing the trails that have been walked before it. This is especially true in the film's conclusion. Obviously, I'm not going to say anything, but I will say that I thought it was handled very delicately, respectfully, and classy. However, that being said, the film has a few issues, as they always do, and that leads me to the cons. Let's start with the pacing, because we have a roughly 2-hour film here, which is a nice runtime. It's not too long, not too short. It's a nice window to work with. I think the problem is this film makes weird decisions on what it chooses to put focus and time into. Sometimes it'll focus on things that I didn't think we needed to linger on as much as they do, while simultaneously we have things that just kind of sped through that I thought we should have marinated on a little more. This is emphasized in the editing, at certain points having very strange scene structure. There were some scenes where I feel like the transition between them was a little jarring, like it'd be a conversation between two people, then all of a sudden it abruptly ends the conversation right in the middle of it, and it just jumps into the next scene without having any like establishing shots to kind of buffer that transition a little bit. So you'd have some conversations that feel like they ended prematurely, and then the next conversation would also start prematurely and not really factor in that counterbalance of how this one ended. This one started too quickly, and it just always felt like I was playing catch up in my mind, like, oh, I guess that conversation's over. This isn't a huge thing, it's not a frequent thing, but it's like with anything in editing, like you're never gonna admire and acknowledge good editing. Good editing is the stuff that you don't notice anything at all. It goes unnoticed when they're doing it right. So when these random blips in the radar occur, they kind of stand out a lot more than they should, and that was kind of the case for me with this film. Another thing that can be kind of jarring is some weaker points in the writing, particularly in the dialogue. Whether it's the timing of jokes or unnecessary and repetitive expositions, like when an idea has already been affirmed by one character and then multiple characters just kind of pile on like, we get it, we don't have to keep saying or acknowledging it. Which again is not a huge thing or a frequent thing, but an equal part surprising thing, because our writer and director is someone that has made films like Thank You for Smoking and Juno. Films with really great dialogue. So when these moments happen where it's not as strong as you'd expect, it feels a little off and it feels forced. What also feels off and forced are certain subplots and characters that I feel like just didn't have anything to do. They were super inconsequential to the larger scope of the whole film. Most of my gripes within this realm circulate around Finn Wolfhard's character and his girlfriend. I put girlfriend in quotes because, I don't know, gets a little statutory. But I get why they wanted Finn Wolfhard in this movie. He's the kid from Stranger Things. In a Ghostbusters movie, I mean, that just kind of sells itself. I think the problem is they didn't give him anything consequential to do. Every time it cuts to him away from Paul Rudd or Mckenna Grace, I was like, oh, why? Finally, my last con, going along with all the other people that have pinned this con on this film, are maybe a little bit of an over-reliance on Easter eggs and references. Granted, this is coming from someone who doesn't have the nostalgic connection to the film to appreciate them anyway. Still, I thought they could have cut them down a little bit. I feel like way too often they put too much stock in them, like they made them too much front and center references instead of Easter eggs, where they're a little more hidden. They're not putting too much stock into them. They could just be little cherries on top versus this thing that they're making you look at. Because if a full-on reference that you've constructed a scene and scenario around does not land with the audience, it's kind of like someone who tells a joke that doesn't land. The person telling the joke leaves a little bit of time after telling the joke for the anticipated, expected laughter, but if the laughter doesn't come,
dead air.
I think ultimately this film suffers from a little bit of an identity crisis, because there are two paths and it's sort of hard to kind of travel them both and reap the benefits of both. There's the path that they took where everyone goes into the movie knowing it's a Ghostbusters film, so they go in expecting a Ghostbusters film, and as a result of that expectation, the filmmaker feels the need to hit you in the face repeatedly with Easter eggs and references because you're expecting a Ghostbusters movie. Which, yes, is kind of annoying in itself, but more so it damages the fact that we all know that this is a Ghostbusters movie now. So when this broken family moves into a broken house in an old broken town and weird shit starts happening, We already know what's going on. We know it's a Ghostbusters movie. We know who they're gonna call. It sort of eliminates all surprise or suspense that this movie could have. We're not solving this mystery next to them. We have all the information that they're looking for. Now imagine if this film went the Split route, where we didn't know that Split was in the same universe as Unbreakable, and as a result of the fact that we didn't have that information, they were able to just build the world of Split instead of just bleeding over all these Unbreakable references left and right. And at the end of the runtime, the story and the world grows as it should. It's not being hindered by the weight of expectations or comparison. Am I saying that this template would have worked for this film? I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to know if we didn't know that it was a Ghostbusters film going into the movie, if the third act and conclusion of the film, which worked here, would it still have worked if we didn't know it was a Ghostbusters film? I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller. But I do think it would have helped, especially in the first two acts when this film is just throwing the kitchen sink at us with references and Easter eggs, trying to appease the Ghostbusters crowd instead of letting this film just grow on its own. All in all, though, I think this movie is good. It sort of has a generational charm to it, like a family dynamic when you see who wrote the film, who directed the film, who are they related to, who's in it, where are they at now. For someone like me who has very little nostalgic or emotional connection to this franchise, for me to still feel pretty good about it, I don't know, worth a call. I'm going to give Ghostbusters Afterlife a B-. But that is just me. What do you guys think? Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And make sure you subscribe to this channel to stay up to date. New videos coming real soon. Stay safe. Thanks for checking in.